Hello and welcome. I'm Tina Dahealy and this is Lions Live, brought to you with our official streaming partner YouTube. This edition of Lions Live is called the New Creators Toolkit, and it's all about you. How you can become a better creative, how you can adapt your skills and capabilities for a new world order, and what's required to thrive now in a world beset with uncertainty. If the last few months have taught us anything, it's that crises require creativity, and we're here this week to feed your imagination. Today we have a slightly different but exciting format where we will be offering you the chance to connect with the legends and creative heavyweights of the industry through our mentor-led sessions. I'll be handing over to Maximilian Khaled, who'll be walking you through the day.
Great, simple, powerful advertising. It isn't about special effects. It's about storytelling right here. I would say everyone, have mentors, have people that you look up to.
It's really important to embrace people that are different from yourself. They actually interact, the sparkles that it creates allow you to have so many different ideas. And that culture will breed even more innovation.
I think you should have that feeling in advertising. You should look forward to having your thing run and like mess people up, you know? And there should be a little bit of that vandalism in everything that you do.
Saying yes to a challenge that feels uncomfortable is always more interesting than saying no. Make yourself uncomfortable and be comfortable with it, because whatever happens, you'll have some fun along the way.
Hello and welcome to the fourth day of Lions Live New Creators Toolkit. I'm Maximilian Khaled and I'm going to be navigating you through an amazing afternoon of mentor-led workshops. Lions Live's famous What I've Learned series is taking on a new twist for March. Today, you will not only hear amazing career stories and secrets of success from some of the most celebrated individuals in our industry, but you will also get the chance to workshop with them. And there's an interactive widget which is located next to your video stream. So throughout the day, we will be posing questions and polls so you can interact directly with our speakers. Our live Q&A is powered by the brand building platform WeTransfer. But let's give this a try to warm everyone up. So the first question of the day is, where are you tuning in from today? And while we're waiting for your answers, let me introduce myself. I'm Max, or Maximilian. I'm from Sweden, but I'm currently living in the UK. And 8 years ago, I founded a company called The Pop-Up Agency. And since then, I've popped up around the globe to solve briefs in 48 hours. And today, I work as an independent consultant, and I'm helping brands develop agile creative processes, because I believe that everyone is creative and can be creative with the right tools and mindset. But enough about me. Let's see where in the world you guys are popping in from. Okay, brilliant. Welcome, everyone. We have people tuning in from France. We have people tuning in from London, New York. Welcome. Fantastic. Welcome, everyone. So first out today, we have Jean Lin. She's the Global CEO Creative at Dentsu. And Jean is going to take us on a journey to explore how leadership isn't about power or persuasion, but it's about finding your unique self. Jean's journey started in the coffee shops of Taiwan and playing the piano in her childhood home before embarking on her professional path. Jean will be joining us for a live Q&A afterwards, so do not forget to submit your questions. But now, the moment we've all been waiting for, the first session of the day. This is Jean Lin's What I've Learned.
When I was really young, actually what I wanted to do has nothing to do with what I'm doing today. I imagined to be a pianist. I started to learn piano when I was 2. So I always think that I'll be a pianist traveling around the world and play piano. And that was, my widest dream until maybe when I was 10. My father was a journalist. So one of the games that he and I always play when I was young was he will find coffee shop. We live in Taipei. He will find coffee shop around the city corner, and we will bring some book and go to the coffee shop, drink coffee, tea, and observe people. So he will ask me to imagine what's the relationship of the couples over there at that table. What do you think is their story? Where do you think they're from? And we will convince each other, because sometimes we observe different versions of story. My father would tell me, because he had strong journalist instinct, he would tell me why he thinks there's a better story there versus here. So that process, now thinking back, I didn't feel it's a training. For me, it's a game and spending time with your father. But now thinking back, I think that's a fantastic exercise and training for me. My father was a very data-driven person. He was really good at math. He learned from theory that children learning how to play piano early in the years will be good at math. That's the reason why he asked me to start playing piano when I was 2. Because thinking about it is quite interesting, because if you look at the notes when you're playing piano, when you look at the lyric and the melody, actually you will not go into individual notes. You're actually looking at it conceptually with the relative distance between notes. And when the distance is comfortable and lovely, the music looks great and it's in harmony. When it's not, it never works. So in a way, it's related to mathematics, because a lot of that is not about the absolute number, it's about the relative distance between objects and between incidents. Learning to play piano made me romancing and humanize data, because I can humanize it as a piece of music that I hear. My father would want me just to be myself. He always said that the first and most important thing is to be a better person. Don't try to be a smarter woman, because it's irrelevant. Just be happy, be yourself, and express yourself in your most authentic form. That's, I believe, where he wanted me to be. So I started as an account executive in Goodby in Taiwan. I never heard of Goodby before, actually, before I went and interviewing, because that was when Goodby first entered Taiwan. And advertising at that time in Taiwan was perceived as not a very worthy industry. It just feels like people do not know what advertising people do. But I knew it's an industry that creates great commercials and stories. So I went and interviewed. When I first went there, they asked me, after a series of interviews, they said, we have 2 openings. One is an account executive, the other is a copywriter. What would you prefer to do? And I choose account executive, because I said, I'm not sure if I will react very well when people change my copy. So I'd rather be the person protecting the people that are writing the copy. So that's how I started my advertising career. There are many, many people that I've met in the journey that inspire me a lot. But I think one of the few that first impacted me, and it impacted me a lot in the way that I look at talent and team building, is the boss that I had in Goodby, Taiwan. So his name is T.B. Song, and he's now the Greater China chairman for Goodby in Greater China. He's I would describe him as a very relaxed leader. He tolerates all kinds of different people, strange people coming from different backgrounds and diversity. I think my time at Goodby really made me realize why diversity breeds innovation. Because when people come from so many different backgrounds, and they actually interact, the sparkles that it creates allow you to have so many different ideas, and that culture will breed even more innovation. So I feel it's really important to embrace people that are different from yourself. That's how you get to a better place together. So there's another person, very, very important for me. Let me see. It is Don Schultz. Don Schultz is my professor when I studied at Northwestern University on the IMC program. He's the one that inspires so many people, but the way he inspired me is very unique because when I got to the US, I was really shy. And you know, the Chinese value is that you need to think 3 times on what you have to say. Unless you add value to the conversation, please don't say a word. That's how we were brought up. So in classes in the beginning, before when I first got there, I was really shy and quiet. But every time I did very well on my paper and test score. So Don Schultz asked me to go to his office, asked me to go to the office with him. And then he said, why, you have so many great ideas, why don't you share it in class? So I explained to him the cultural difference. And Don said to me, he looked into my eyes directly and said, just be yourself, who cares? That's something really hit me really hard when I first got to the US. It's a different cultural realization. But of course, I still hold my value that I will want to add value to conversation. Otherwise, I don't say a word. But the way that he inspired me beyond his professional capability is the way that he looks at, simply looking at the core of your soul and just say, be yourself. Nobody really cares. My first account was Philips, and the client is a very strong lady coming from Amsterdam. That was my first job, and I learned how to interact and communicate with people coming from very different culture. So that's something that actually helped me to be bold and brave, because you don't know what people don't until you communicate with them, and they don't know what's on your mind. So when you grow up in an environment that people mostly have similar background with yours, you don't have to explain a lot. But when you work with people from different cultures, you do have to tell them very explicitly what you need. So that's a very important learning for me, working with different cultures and people with different backgrounds. So one interesting part when I started to work for Philips, the second day I was on the job, I was told that there is a photo shooting session for Philips baking oven. So I was dying when the art director told me that he's gonna take me to the shoot. It turns out to be I need to wash dishes for 8 hours because it is baking oven and it's cut after cut after cut for the recipe. And it's really tiring because whoever came to a photo shoot would know the kind of details and everything that you have to revise it and shoot it again and again because the color is not right, lighting is not right, the position of the food is not right. But it's one of the most interesting journey that I'm in. I just realized you have to roll out your sleeves. You have to roll out your sleeves and learn about things while doing it. You don't make assumptions as how you start learning. The art director, his name is Vincent, he told me while I was washing dishes why they have to restart the shooting again and again. Why is it not meeting the requirement of Philips standard? And why some of the shots probably wouldn't meet the brand personality of Philips that they want to portray. you never thought of it that way. These are just recipe photos. But it's really important. And I think for young people starting in any career, the most important thing is start from scratch. Start from learning and accept and take everything come into your way. Perceive that as an opportunity to make you better and learn more about the perspective in the world. It's all worth it. When I had my daughter, my second child, and I was on maternity leave at home, I was really bored. And that's a time when internet really started booming. I thought that it's something that's going to change the entire way people communicate with each other, how people connect with the world, how people search for information. And that's fascinating because that will change the way brand and business approach marketing and communication. That will change the way creativity play a role in people's life. So I was quite fascinated about it. You know, during the months after you gave birth to your baby, if you're Chinese, there's so many restrictions to be put on you. You can't read a book. You know, there are many things that you cannot do. But my daughter my mother didn't know that I had a computer in my study. So I went online, search online, and think of so many things. That's a starting point when I'm saying, I should do this. I don't know where, but I have to do this. When I went back to the Goodby office after the maternity leave, I also realized that traditional agency structure would be very difficult for me to do what I need to do. For one thing, the inviting technology people to join the advertising agency at that time is just literally impossible. But they are critical in making new experiences happen. So after a long while, I decided that it's probably best I start something on my own. I never thought of making a fortune out of it. I just want to test the idea that I have and see if that will make sense. So that's how I start my business. A couple months after we started the business, there was a NASDAQ crash. So suddenly, internet became a thing that everybody has questions about. That made the business at the time quite difficult. So I was lucky when I started the business. I won 2 major clients as my foundation client. One is HSBC, who told me the most rational, data-driven part of the use of internet and digital creativity. The other client was Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola is the one that really pushed the boundary for the best of creative experience. So I had 2 very good major clients. I was lucky. But then I was very busy working on project for clients. I forgot to invoice my client. There was one day I look at the accounts and look at my bank account and realize that I have some difficulty in paying for the salary for that month for our teams. The 2 actions I took right after that, you can imagine I was devastated. I nearly mortgaged my home in order to pay for the people's salary, and I of course called the client to push for account receivables. I hired immediately a very experienced CFO. That's the best decision I've made when I was running my own business, because the proper operation excellence help to fulfill the need and your imagination in the way that you can have a better run business, to create a freedom for people to really go out and do everything that they want to do to innovate. I am a Buddhist. So I hold a lot of Buddhist philosophy in the way I look at the world and approach different world's perspective. I believe that you have to focus on your mind. The world and life's lesson is to focus on your mind. Your mental strength is what makes you do something successfully or not. The other thing is you have to be really kind to yourself. You need to realize and understand that everybody have a lot of moments that you have thoughts and emotions. Sometimes you're nervous, sometimes you're angry, sometimes you're extremely happy, sometimes you're humble, sometimes you're arrogant. You have all those emotions around you. But the most important thing for Buddhists is not to criticize those emotions, but to look at the emotions as it is and accept it. It's like ideas come and go, emotions come and go. You have to be kind to yourself in accepting that. That's how you can get in the state of less anxious, because you accept yourself as who you are, including your emotions. And I think not to hide behind a seemingly stable and authoritative state as a leader also is very important, because you have to show your vulnerability. Your team, no matter young or old, experienced or inexperienced, they may have great ideas that they can support you if they know that you need them. So I believe the Buddhist philosophy is a very important part of my life, and it has huge impact on how I live and go through the journey. I think at that time, that was a time when I started Wings in Taipei. I always thought of that agency will be embracing the power and potential of internet among Chinese consumers. So a natural place to start is to open the China office. When you come to China, you do realize that it's like a raindrop falling into the sea. You have great ideas, but it will be diluted by the massive ocean. That's a moment I know I have to strategically think through how I connect with a platform that will enable all the great talent that I work with to create a different future and leverage the resources to find a new way in supporting and helping our clients. The moment when I thought about this, there were quite a few companies come in contact with us. And my end decision was made based on the people that I've met. The people that I've met really know what internet is all about, really humble about how digital can make an impact beyond advertising and media. That's the fascinating part. You feel that you're meeting with people sort of subscribe to the same vision that you subscribe to. With huge entrepreneurial spirit, we're given a lot of encouragement and also stimulation to continue to push the boundary. That's the reason why I joined and I sold the company by 2004 to Isobar. And then the holding company of Isobar being acquired by Dentsu. So when I sold to Isobar, our holding company has a British culture. And when Dentsu acquired Aegis, it's a mixed East and West, West and East culture. I feel very fascinated to be working for the only holding company looking at the world from Eastern lens. And when I say Eastern lens, I mean a very empathetic and long-term point of view to success. Dentsu has been around for more than 120 years. So they have a very long-term view on every single incident that happens every year. And they don't really look at quarter after quarter progression. Of course, we'll all build up quarter by quarter. But the view and the purpose for Dentsu always look at very long-term on how innovation can make the world a better place. So I'm very happy with the decision so far. And also going forward, I think this will be an interesting journey still for our team in creating something new. The 5 advice that I'm giving to young people entering the industry. The first one, I think it's really, really important that you learn how to deal with things that you do not know. I think what happens in my career progression when I look back, it is all because I embrace the things that I do not know, and how to deal with it will be important in making a career for yourself. I think the second thing is that to be successful in today, you need to be an idealistic pragmatist. So it means that you have to be a practical person, but you also need to be idealistic at the same time. And remember, because the world is getting into a transformation journey, so are you. Therefore, it is really important to ensure that your faith is more important than your fear. The third very important thing is really to be brave, to recruit and work with people that are extremely different from yourself. They probably are someone that is so different that it takes a lot of time to understand them and to understand how you work with them. But those diversity in composition will make innovation much easier and stronger. The fourth part is to remember and ensure that there is a work-life connection, in the sense that you have to have a good support system, either your family or friends. I feel really fortunate because my husband is my best friend, and my kids are also my best friend. They support me through the journey and make things so much easier than if I have to do it by myself. And the fifth, the most important one, is to remember authenticity is more important than perfection. Don't try to be perfect, just try to be yourself. That's the only way you get to do things that you truly, truly like. I hope this is helpful. Bye-bye.
What a phenomenal session. I got Jean with me now in the studio. Welcome, Jean.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Hi, Max. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Very
How are you?
good.
Good. We had a lot of questions coming your way, so should we dive into the first ones?
Sure.
Okay, the first question we have is, this week of Lions Live is all about sharpening your skills. So what are the skills creatives need for be successful 2021?
I think the question is a very interesting one and probably a timeless one, because for creators, the core is also always going back to understanding of people, understanding humanity, understanding what makes people cry, laugh, concerned, happy. And those are the core skills for any creative talent. You need to understand human beings. You need to understand human beings better than anyone in the world. And you have to really interpret it in a way so that you connect that with your ideas. So I believe that's timeless. Technology or context wouldn't change that skills and capability. If you have that, no AI can replace you.
Wow, thank you for that answer. Amazing. We actually ran a poll during your talk regarding learning process, and we got the results in, and the majority of the people had said that the learning by doing approach was their way of learning. Would you say that your learning process have changed over the years, or is it still the same as you were young?
I would say that the core is the same in the sense that I think our industry and the way we work, we create things, right? We create stories, concepts, strategic directions, vision. You have to create it so that people can see it and understand it. So learning by doing is a very, very important element. How you roll out your sleeves, try to get to the core of it. And then that's the way you actually learn the most. Because otherwise, a lot of things that you imagine are your perception. And there's nothing to do with reality. And also nothing to do with how you can truly make a difference. So from that perspective, how I learn remain the same. But of course, the toolbox that surrounds you to enable you to learn better change over time. Now it's so easy to get information. It's so easy to connect with people. I learned a lot by connecting with people because they're always people having a very precious point of view. They're so different from mine, but add to the perspective when I imagine and envision what the world is like.
So now during this crazy time that we've been in, or that we're still in, how have you been able to connect with people and still, learn from other people then? Do you have any tips or tricks how to do that?
Actually, I find that there are quite a lot of resources that's very fascinating. Of course, there are a few valuable information sources I always go to. But a lot of time, I actually think that all the new platforms give us such tremendous opportunity to learn how people and generation are evolving. Like in the past, I, of course, learned a lot of things watching YouTube. But the thing that's fascinating me about YouTube in observing people is actually the comments related to any content that's been broadcast on YouTube. You get to know more about how people react and perceive things. And most importantly, how do people perceive things different from yourself? Right now, if you look at TikTok and the TikTok creators community, they're amazing. They come from so many different cultures and they take the nuances of the interesting part of their life and make the world so interesting, entertainment, and better. So I do a lot of online research and observation right now. The connection with people, I think, LinkedIn remain to be a very important element that you understand and connect with people. I'm really interested in sustainability right now. And just by searching on LinkedIn, I make so many new friends that's dedicated in this area. And it's fascinating to see everybody's journey and people's open-mindedness, especially I think during the time of pandemic, is amazing. I do believe pandemic in a way push us to experience life in a very different way, but it actually makes us more connected and united. We're more willing to share our story with other people in a lockdown because we know at the end we're on this together.
Thank you so much. What a fantastic answer. Thank you. We got another question in here. What's the secret ingredient that makes creativity coming from APAC so interesting and unique?
I think creativity really starts from the culture. And Asia Pacific is a region that has so many different diverse cultures. The geography difference is not huge for some of them, but the cultural difference are distinct. When you have distinctive difference in culture, the perspective, ideas, and insights can be so much more different. And therefore, it gives you an exotic and entertaining perspective when you look at the creativity and content. And that's what make it, it's not a general or a scale concept. Every insight are unique, and therefore the context that is expressed give you a unique creative experience.
Thank you so much. We got a second question here for you. What drives you to create excellent work, and what motivates you to be such an amazing creative?
I would say that I'm a creative person by nature, but my inspiration is to build a creative business where a lot of creative people can co-create and create new things for the future. So in a sense, I think that, the one thing that always intrigued me is when you look at something, do you look at the similarity or do you look at the difference? I think you need to look at the both, because when you put the similarity and difference together, you create a conflict. And that context will give you interesting new ideas. If you keep observing people, if you keep becoming a cultural observer, and I would look at myself and I said that I wish I can become a cultural engineer and an idea engineer. That means that take relevant cultural nuances, connect that with idea, and engineer it to make it real in the world for people to see. That would include I created myself, I have ideas myself, but that will also include that you engage and connect all the creators and creative peoples coming from different background, different culture to co-create something and something meaningful so that we make meaningful progress for the world. And at the same time, when we create, I want to see how the creative people can really make the world a better place at the same time. So we were talking about good and growth. I think driving growth and doing good to the world is the most noble creative task that anyone can embrace. And with that purpose, the creativity that come into mind and the innovation just be unlimited.
And speaking of being a cultural observer, you mentioned TikTok. And what are the new technologies or new platforms that we should look out for in the next couple of years?
Well, that's probably a 100 million question. I don't have like a definite answer for that because I think what the world does is the world always surprise me. I would say one thing that it would be really useful for me as an exercise is every morning I wake up, I look at the mirror on myself and I say to myself, you know nothing about this world because something new today will enter the world and it will surprise you. If you have this beginner's mindset always, every day you'll find something new. But I would say we're moving into mixed reality world, right? The experience that we have, the mix of virtual and physical, the mixed reality nature of the journey that we're in will be the great inspiration for the next generation creativity. So the new creative canvas that come to you, like a TikTok, will be appearing every day. And you just need to keep an open mind so that you keep learning new things and do not have assumptions as to whether that may be something similar to things that you've seen before.
So could you give an example when you've recently learned something new that you were unaware of?
Oh, so I came across this sustainable solution called Ubuntu. It's a sustainable business solution. I was fascinated by it. I came across it through an acquaintance. They're connecting so many different people in this area that all are passionate about driving sustainable solutions. They might be the academic, they might be creators, they may be innovators, they may be product and service designers. They're trying to solve different sustainability issues in the world. And the solutions that they create, for example, reducing waste, looking at new way of designing packaging. Like e-commerce is so prevailing everywhere. One of the key issues the world will have to face will be the garbage actually created by all the e-commerce opportunities. All those creative minds come together and they actually come across so many interesting solutions. Those are the fascinating part I think creativity can really bring to the world. Because creativity is not just making the world more interesting and happier for people to live a happier life. It also gives you an opportunity to really create and think through the next 10 years what the world could be like with one of your brilliant ideas. So that's one of the platforms that I came across recently, actually just the matter of the past 2 weeks, that really fascinates me.
Wow, thank you so much. I think we have time for one quick question in the end. So when you're hiring people, what skills are you primarily looking for?
I'm looking for a few things depending on the skills, of course, the roles. But one thing that I feel is so important is the way you can understand, empathize the feelings of people around you. especially emphasize with the feelings when people are totally unlike you. So I've never seen a successful creative that can actually have a long career without being able to empathize people's feeling. So for me, there are a lot of skill sets that's coming up. To me, those are the tactical elements surrounding one core thing. The core thing is to be able to understand, empathize, and inspire people. And that's the most important skill a creator needs to have.
Thank you so much, Jean. This has been truly amazing. Really appreciate you taking your time, but I'm afraid we have to cut it there.
Thank you very much.
Have a good one. Bye-bye. All right. Now up next, we have a film from Laura Jordan Bambach. She's the president and chief creative officer of Grey London. And for over 20 years, Laura has enhanced the advertising industry through a fresh and pioneering spirit, and with her strong passion for storytelling. In this next session, we will be hearing the story of her unconventional path and how it's so incredibly important to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. We will be running polls on Slido during this next session, so remember to get involved and use the widget next to your video screen. So, Laura will also be joining us for a live Q&A afterwards, so do not forget to submit your questions. But now, let's get started with our second session of the day. This is Laura's What I've Learned.
Hi, I'm Laura JB, Chief Creative Officer and President of Grey in London. You'll know us from our work with Pringles, Volvo, Carlsberg, and the Gay Times, amongst other amazing clients. I guess I've had a pretty unconventional path to where I am now, and that continues. I joined Grey during COVID, so I've had a pretty unconventional start here too. And I guess you would say I've always taken that other path. It's kind of defined me. So that idea, and I guess the idea that I wanted to share with you when I was thinking about, my life and my journey and the rest of it, is this idea of being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because if there was one thing probably that summed me up, it would be that. I grew up in Australia. First in Canberra, which is the world's weirdest capital city. I don't know whether any of you have been there, probably not. Most people don't even know it is the capital city of Australia. And I guess growing up there, I've always been really, really creative, but I've always also been a complete nerd. So my parents have got cassette tapes of my brother and sister and I when we were small. We'd take them into our bedrooms and record. My sister would tell grand stories and what have you. And I think most of my tapes are reciting maths problems. We moved to Sydney when I was in primary school, and my parents actually still live in this amazing rural area outside of Sydney. It backs onto a huge national park. It really was in the middle of nowhere, which I just really loved as a kid, and it just blows me away actually, like how much freedom I had growing up. My parents would were working kind of night and day, so we were kind of what you call, I guess, latchkey kids. We'd come home of our own accord, and we just had the bush to play with and each other, and we would be out there. You think now about letting your small children out into the Australian bush while you're not at home. That freedom was incredible, and the amount of imagination, just kind of playing games and inventing worlds, I guess, is what my childhood was all about. I was also a massive feminist and quite a tomboy as a kid. So I'll tell you two great stories. One was I was desperate to join the Scouts, and I would not join the Girl Guides because I thought they were girly. I was absolutely desperate to join the Scouts. And my dad went to the local council to petition for girls to be allowed to join the Scouts, just so that I could go and join the Scouts like my little brother. Unfortunately, it didn't work, so I didn't do either. But the other thing is I was a massive fan of football. I love football. I love playing football ever since I was a little kid. And you kind of get shepherded into a girls' football team, but I didn't want to play football with the girls. I wanted to play football with the boys. So my parents again supported me And I went and played in an all-boys team in an all-boys league until I was about 15. Left back, which was actually really, really fun because you can be quite brutal as a girl and get away with it. And, I think my parents have always supported me. Actually, my dad brought home a sticker for me when I was about 8 that said, sometimes the best man for the job is a woman. And I think at that point, I was just like, right, I'm going to set out to prove you right. But on that creative side, there are another couple of things, I guess, that really shaped me. And the main one is music. So again, was probably into the really unconventional stuff. Aisha Zenda Button, Nick Cave, I guess The Cure on the light side, Sisters of Mercy, Fetus, the Cocteau Twins, like kind of the Butthole Surfers, great, very alternative bands. And I just used to spend, all day, every day, like listening to music as much as possible. I used to have my tapes in my car, to drive myself to school for the last couple of years of school. And, my car was full of tapes. I used to sneak into gigs, when I was well underage to go and see amazing bands play. And it's something that still really inspires me today. Music is kind of my lifeblood. I thought a lot about what I might want to be when I, grow up, when I leave school, and I was pretty determined to do something really, really creative. I kind of, I think partly because my dad really wanted me to do something that straddled something a bit more practical. And I was like, I'm just going to go to art school, being a contrarian. So I went and studied fine art. I went to College of Fine Arts in Sydney, part of University of New South Wales, and I studied painting. But again, I was not necessarily very good at towing the line. So my first semester, by the end of the first semester, my teacher was really cross with me, and he actually called me a colourist as an insult, because I wouldn't stick to realistic colours in the things that he set me to do, and I was just so enraged that I couldn't do what I wanted, which is probably terrible now. But I left to do photography because that was the thing I was studying as my minor, so I wouldn't lose credit points, and I ended up in photography. And digital media was part of photography because I didn't know where to put it back then. It was the early 90s, and I fell into this like amazing place, and I found my place. I found suddenly I could bring coding, and I could bring animation, and I could bring creativity, and really importantly as well, I could bring my beliefs and my politics and my voice to the work in a really exciting way. And so I really found my kind of place there. And whereas the rest of my year would, focusing on perfect prints and, spending all their time in the dark room, I was either kind of printing stuff out in the dark room, cutting it up and turning it into sculptures or something, making political statements with giant recipe cards around, women's place in the home, knitting enormous pixelated clitoris rug wall hangings, again, to talk about kind of how women are objectified on the internet, getting involved in queer performance art, which was awful. Like I'm not cut out to be a performance artist. So, all provocative, political, very feminist, very, kind of touching on, I guess, probably very personally, my place in the world, and my identity as well. I always just really wanted to be myself. I always wanted to be creative, but creatively myself. I was thinking when I was a little kid, could I be a window dresser for a big department store? Could I be a politician? I don't know. There were loads of things. Could I be an inventor? But I think where I've ended up is this perfect point, right? It's got the creativity. It's got actually being able to put something out into the world that makes a big difference. It's got the geekiness and the nerdiness that I love, and the inventiveness and the innovation. But most importantly, I just kind of wanted to do it for myself. I wanted to cut my own path. I've been a taxidermist. I've been a clothes shop manager. I've sliced meat. I've run delis and sandwich bars, kind of anything that I could do to make myself self-sufficient, but making my own way was always really, really important. and I'd kind of happily try my hand at pretty much anything to make sure that I had the money that I needed in my pocket to do the things that I wanted to do for myself. My entrepreneurial streak kicked in pretty early on as well. So I was selling secondhand clothes, and this is how I got into web, kind of the web and the precursor to me having a career. So I was selling secondhand clothes at a market in Glebe in Sydney to put myself through uni. And on another one of the stalls was this amazing woman called Rosie Cross from Geek Girl, which was one of the world's first big, I guess, serialized websites. And it also had a zine. In fact, we used to call it a hyperzine because it was online and in the real world. So it was the world's first cyber-feminist hyperzine. And she was at the market selling stickers with "Girls Need Modems" or "Put down your pony and pick up a computer." And it was 1994. And the magazine was mind-blowing for me because it had that amazing, strong feminist energy. It was exciting. It was geeky as hell. You know, amazing way of connecting women in technology at a time when you just couldn't find any other women who kind of had a passion for technology. And I've been learning, you know, animation programs and those kinds of things, and HyperCard, if anyone remembers it. You know, I came across her and I was wearing this little crop top, and I've got this Escher tattoo of kind of spiders on my stomach. And she went, "Oh my goodness, they have spiders, it's a web, it's the World Wide Web. Can I get a photographer to come and take a picture of your stomach for the cover of the magazine?" And I'm like, "Yes." And then she rang me a couple of weeks later and said, "Can't take a picture because we don't have a photographer." And I said, "Oh, look, I've done photography at uni. I'm doing photography at uni. I'll take a picture of my stomach." And so I did. And then she contacted me a couple of weeks later, and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, this month's magazine is not going to come out because the designer doing the magazine has pulled out and I don't have anyone to do it." And I went, "I can design a magazine." Doing it all wrong, of course, using Photoshop, not knowing how to actually lay stuff out because I've had no training in advertising or design or typography or anything. But she let me do it. And then she just said, "Look, anything that you learn how to do, I'll give you a platform to do it on Geek Girl." That time I was living in this amazing artist collective with a gallery in it called Imperial Slacks. We were helping each other and we were, you know, doing shows for each other. And I realised that some of the stuff that I was learning at uni for my art and through Geek Girl was something that I could start to make money from. So I started my own agency. It was called Joystick Digital Media, which is supposed to be a pun on a cock. Haha. And I'd go into ad agency. So at the time there weren't very many people that could do what I could do. So very often an ad agency would be asked by a brand to maybe build a website, and they'd get it so far, maybe they had designed it, but they wouldn't know how to take their designs and actually get them onto the internet. They wouldn't even know how to upload things. So I would come in, charge them a load of money, cut and code everything, write them their database if they needed a database, sort out, you know, their hosting if they needed hosting, do all of that practical stuff so that they could deliver their stuff on time. Usually, you know, probably sleep on their floor, spend 72 hours doing it, earn a ton of money for me at the time, and that would allow me to kind of take a step back and get back into my uni for a couple of weeks. So, you know, I kind of found this thing and then was doing more and more and more of it. I picked up a job, I think in about 1998 as a creative director for a set of magazines, you know, quite cool magazines, helping them to move their content from the magazines online for the first time. So I was working there, and I was also teaching at my old university. I'd started a master's by then, and I was teaching undergrads and setting up their digital media degree. And this amazing person called Simon Waterfall came to talk to me. So he's an old D&AD president. He came to talk to all of my students, and he was wearing a dress, and I think he had a blue mohawk, and the work was just so fucking cool. So cool compared to anything that I'd seen going on, you know, in Oz. So I asked him whether I could have a job. Being completely untrained, there wasn't really a role for me as a designer in like what I found out was the world's coolest digital agency of the 90s. But every time he came from London to Sydney, he'd see my portfolio, he'd give me tips, I'd go and learn new things, I'd experiment with new stuff. And then finally he said, look, I've got a job at the agency, but it's not as a designer because you're not good enough yet. But I've got a job as a producer. Would you come and work as a producer? Now, I don't know whether other people would have found that too uncomfortable, but I'm comfortable with that. So I went and joined Deep End as a producer. And about a year later, he said, there's a job going in London for a junior designer on 12k a year, right at the bottom of the pile again, like right back to the beginning. But if you want it, you can have it. And I was like, yes, I want that. I packed up my stuff. I think I moved to London in about 6 weeks, and moved my life over and came to London. And that is how I ended up here. So thank you, Simon, who is still like a brilliant friend and a mentor. And then I worked in some amazing digital agencies in London. So we were kind of the pirates of the industry back then. We'd be making things that have never been made before. We were experimenting. There were no rules. The clients really, they were after experimentation and trying new things out. And we kind of operated a bit under the radar. So all of the rules and the roles that existed in advertising didn't exist for us. So, hacking and coding and playing with formats in really experimental ways, still where a lot of my favorite work comes from, I think. And then my first big role was as head of art at Glue, which is now Isobar. And when I started, we were an independent agency of about 25 people. And I think when I left years later, we were about 300 and we'd been acquired. But it was there that I realized that, for all my passion for like making things and like naturally good eye and the rest of it, the thing that I was best at actually was bringing the team together. Really building a team and a culture and making everyone else sing. So, that is the thing probably that I'm most proud of, actually. And I'd say if I had a superpower, it would be that, which is a hard thing to admit as a creative person. So we did some really groundbreaking digital work. We did Mini Have a Word, which at the time was, I think, the first interactive video that had ever been made. We did some amazing stuff for Virgin Money, for example. We won a load of awards, and I learned a lot about that traditional advertising side of things that I'd never known before, like what a planner was and what a creative team was, because you just didn't have them on the digital side of things. I've been a bit of a rare beast in design and technology and creative all the way through my career, and I'm okay with that. But at Glue, I was also really passionate about changing the industry for other women and opening the door a bit wider. I think in the 2000s, being a feminist was very uncool. Conversations about bias were uncool. But myself and my friend Ali Larry, who was another creative director, we decided that we really need to tackle it, because what we were seeing in our agencies is there were no women applying for jobs. None, not even junior jobs. And if you think 50% of creative students are women, where were they all going? It turns out, they're going to other areas of the industry or leaving the industry altogether because they felt like it wasn't for them. So that is how She Says was born. And it's crazy to think we've got over 70,000 members now in something like 53 cities around the world. But it just started with the two of us asking the really uncomfortable and really unfashionable questions about where women in the industry were, and what was holding them back. We started running these events. We were constantly being told that there simply wasn't enough female talent to possibly fill a stage once a month with a couple of women at a women-led speaking night. And, we called bullshit on that. And 14 years later, we are, as I said, all over the world and still going strong. So, that's when it really hit me, this myth about meritocracy. So women weren't at the top because they didn't want to be at the top. They weren't funny. They weren't good enough. They just weren't creatively as sharp as men. They wanted to spend more time with their family. And this is something that we have been finding with She Says now, for the last 14 years, to try to change that. And I absolutely love what I do. I love it. It's the thing that keeps me alive and happy. So I was offered a role at LBI, which is now Digitas, as the group creative director. And then very soon after that, the joint ECD with Simon Gill. I'd never been a creative director before. Felt like a massive step. Felt like I wasn't quite sure what I was doing. Felt very uncomfortable. that is the job that you need to take, and those are the kinds of kind of steps that you need to make, I think, in your career. I'm like, I just don't know whether I can do this. And you really reach deep within yourself and pull something amazing out. And it was such a brilliant time at that agency. We'd been tasked to change this very staid agency into something that really focused on creative work, and we transformed the agency. We made some brilliant work, like the knitting robot for Macmillan cancer support, or replatforming the whole of Virgin Atlantic, and the user experience on that was so goddamn sexy. Really was a wonderful time. I guess when you lean into the unknown as much as I do, you have to be comfortable with failure as well. It's hard when you're a perfectionist not to take things personally, not to suffer from imposter syndrome, not to think everything's your fault. But I realized through the years that every time I genuinely fucked up, it happened because I didn't speak up and I didn't reach out for help. And that's been an enormous learning for me. So I'm not going to talk about any of the rubbish stuff that has happened, or Me Too moments and what have you, because I think every woman has their battle scars, of my age anyway. But the really important thing is how things have changed. And I think the most pivotal moment for me was launching my old agency, Mr. President, in 2012 with Claire and Nick, who were amazing partners. But it came out of a really tough career moment I was having. I was working in an agency which should have been the most creative digital agency on the planet. We were doing some good work, but I was seeing a lot of the amazing digital work as as money was being put into digital was transforming into something that felt really boring and really staid and very programmatic and very rational. And that magic, which was the thing I love about it, I really felt was getting harder and harder to draw out. So the idea with the agency was to take some of that magic, the experimentation, putting, in digital, I guess you call them users, but putting people at the center of ideas, a bit the kind of, I guess, more nimble ways of working, putting all of that into an agency that could break out of those digital borders and actually do much more integrated work. So after 8 pretty fun years, actually, at Mr. P, I felt like I had to leave my family there as well, because I was ready to be uncomfortable again. And I think this is the really interesting thing. I'd become so comfortable. I felt like there was nothing that needed fixing or changing. It was just brilliant people and brilliant work. And I almost felt like I needed to do something that was a challenge that I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to do, to really, lean in again. So that's what brought me to Grey, an amazing agency, again, amazing people, loads of stuff to do, loads of stuff to learn, loads of stuff to add, which is great, so I've collected kind of so many things along the way. It's been really nice to realize that what I know is actually a lot more than what you grow to expect of yourself. And I think that's one of the reasons that I love making myself uncomfortable all the time, because you realize more often than not, sometimes not, that you can do things, right? So in terms of my plans now, in terms of the future and my plans now, all I want to do is, keep making this great work that gives you the tingles, to keep asking, why not? Keep moving forwards with, joy and love and some creative misbehavior. Creativity is, humans' fundamental superpower, right? That is the one thing that separates us from everything else. It's the one thing that helps progress us. It is, the way that we build off each other's ideas, and the way that we kind of contribute to the stories that we're going to tell. And all of my effort now is just going into making sure that that creative energy has a place to shine at Grey, right at the centre of the agency. You can't hit those highs without taking an enormous leap, I think. I know that's a mixed metaphor, but I don't care. It's braver ideas, different ways of working, things that are more playful, and more fun and just doing it together. And in all of my experiences with all my brilliant agencies that I've worked at through the years, that's always been what's been at the center when we're doing our best work. You know, we feel like a pirate ship going into the creative unknown together to go and explore and find something new. If I could give you 5 key takeaways, the first one would be, don't be a dick. Life is too short. The industry has a bad reputation, you know, for dickishness, and it's just not necessary. You can be strong and nice and good and creative. They don't fight against each other. Don't be a dick. I guess the next thing I would say is, you know, we talk a lot about imposter syndrome, but I think you just have to go, like, regardless of where you are in your career, you have not got there by accident, right? You've got there because you have something, right? And you trust in yourself because there's something that you have no one else has, because it comes from you. The next one would be to, like, speak up and ask for help and collaborate. As I said, it's literally been all of my major mistakes that I could have done something about have been because I haven't wanted to ask for help. So ask for help. The next one, I guess, is to be generous with your time, to make sure that you give time to people who need a little bit of advice or need a bit of a lift. So be generous with your time, but be succinct in your feedback. That is something that comes as an Aussie to the UK, where sometimes it can go round and round in circles. Just be clear. And then I guess my last one, coming back to being comfortable with being uncomfortable, it's just like saying yes to a challenge that feels uncomfortable is always more interesting than saying no, right? Regardless of what happens, you're never going to regret saying yes as much as you're going to regret saying no. So just grab it with both hands because it's fleeting. You know, it's not going to be there forever. So throw yourself in the deep end, hold your nose, make yourself uncomfortable, and be comfortable with it, because whatever happens, you'll have some fun along the way.
What a great session by Laura. And we have her with her in the studio now. Hi, Laura.
Hey, Max, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, really well, thank you.
And where are you calling in from?
From London.
Yay.
Yeah.
Not too far away. So you got a ton of questions during this session.
Great.
And we also ran 2 polls during your video. And I was thinking that we should start looking at the first poll. And we asked our audience what they do to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So here they are. So yeah, what are they doing to be comfortable with being uncomfortable? And yeah, breathe deeply and go. Mm-hmm. Yeah, mm-hmm. Pampering, listening to music, let go, connect. What do you say? Is there any of these that resonate well with you?
Yeah, look, I think there are some great ones in here. I think the breathe deeply and go is incredibly important, and it's something that you can't ignore the importance of just taking a breath. I think also, like, treating it as a learning opportunity is a really good one. If whatever the outcome is going to be, you're going to learn something, then immediately it's much easier to have a positive feeling, even if you're in a more dangerous place, I guess. Even if you fail, you will have learned something positive, so it kind of puts you in the right frame of mind.
Yeah, meditate.
Oh, and someone said meditate as well. I actually struggle with straight meditation. But I do yoga meditation, so I sort of more of a guided meditation, but I kind of struggle with mindfulness a little bit. My mind races too much. I find things like guided meditation much easier.
Thank you so much. But let's dive into some of the audience questions then. So what's your advice to female creatives starting off their careers?
Yeah, I mean, I think the industry that you're entering into is so much more inclusive and open than when I started, or even when I first started moving. When I first moved to the UK, I think really, the world is your oyster, and what's most important is that you can speak up, and that others will speak up on your behalf if they see bad behaviour or things getting in your way. We're still not there yet, particularly in creative departments. And I would say this to anyone, not just women, but anyone that needs a little bit of support, or anyone that feels like, I guess there are unseen barriers in front of them. I guess I would say, find an advocate as well. If you're uncomfortable promoting yourself, buddy up with someone in your agency, in your workplace, who can be your advocate and you can be theirs. You can say, when someone takes your idea and says it's theirs, or speaks over the top of you, actually, whatever, Laura's speaking, or Laura's about to say something, or what have you. And I know that's a kind of a practical thing that maybe we shouldn't have to do, but I think for anyone, whether it's just that you're an introvert or whether you feel, a little bit alone in your department, it really, really helps to have someone else there who can kind of step in and support.
And what would you say, what's your best approach to connect with someone that can support you or help you like that?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess it would be, a peer. So someone who you tend to work with a lot, someone who you get on with, someone who you can have a frank conversation with. It could be a boss, but more than likely it might be someone else that you work with at the same level, who can sort of step in there and speak on your behalf.
Okay, thank you so much. We also got one question here, because you were talking about failure in your film. Mm-hmm. How do you embrace failure today?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Not everything obviously goes according to plan. I think, as I said in my video, the things that have happened in my career that I still see as failures have been the failure for me to ask for help and to communicate properly. In terms of whether a piece of work has gone well or not, or what have you, I think all of those could be worked out. This industry is great because it's an industry where we work together to achieve something. It's not a solo project. We're not artists. We're not out there making things on our own. So I think I embrace failure because, I guess through teamwork. So we win as a team, we lose as a team. And certainly something that I'm very aware of never ever doing is, we should never be laying blame on, necessarily a particular person who's done something to put a piece of work out of whack or whatever. We win and lose as a team, and it's our responsibility, if you see someone struggling as well, to be able to step in and to help. So what I like to think is I provide a kind of a safety net, so that the people within Grey, can push themselves and can, kind of step into the unknown and can potentially fail, because we've got the system in place and the support in place with the team to actually, make sure, I guess, it's a safe place to fail.
Yeah, because you were talking about your superpower being to unite your team, or to be there for your team. And we ran a poll asking our audience what their creative superpower would be, and we got quite some interesting results from that. We had someone saying empathy, make the world beautiful, remove apathy, curiosity. I think we also had someone saying make my fingers into pencils. A variety of different superpowers.
Yes.
But if you would emphasize a bit more on like your superpower, like how do you go about to create that environment, and how do you encourage young creatives to fail and to learn by doing, for instance?
Mm-hmm. Again, it's very much about the environment that you're in, and I think that culture comes from the bottom, but it also comes from the top. So I would say to any young creative, make sure that you find a place that feels like it's supportive in that way. There are obviously some bad eggs that where the blame really does land at your door. So I would say, do your research into the culture of the businesses that you work at and make sure it has a really, really positive culture. But you can do things to sort of help support and build that feeling as well. It's harder when you're starting out because you have less influence. But certainly bringing people together over potentially, things that aren't work, putting something on, creating, particularly at this time of COVID when we're all separate, what can we be doing, or what could you be doing to bring the creativity to the office, to share something, to be generous, whatever it is that you have to give. Just as an example, we had an amazing talk at work today by a brilliant producer. So we do something every week where someone comes and talks about something they're passionate about. So it's not about the project, but it's really about sharing a little bit of each other and sharing that, learning to know those people a bit better and building the trust, I think. And just by doing that, I think, it's really built that collaborative, supportive culture. And the talk this morning was amazing because the producer used to be a professional dancer. So the talk was, half an hour on the most beautiful dance and the most beautiful examples of sort of dance that's out there at the moment. It was really, really wonderful. And that brought that spirit. So you don't have to be the boss to be able to bring some of that spirit in, but I think it's, finding those ways of bringing people together and connecting them and sharing things and inspiring in some way.
Great, thank you so much. We got one question from one of our viewers. What was the most challenging and exciting thing about running your own agency?
The most challenging thing is probably the most exciting thing as well, which is the realization that you're driving the bus. There is no other person ahead of you who is going to be clearing the way, who is going to be cleaning the toilets when there's no one to clean the toilets, who is going to be having those difficult conversations. You really are what you make of it when you run your own agency. So that was the hardest thing, because regardless of, whether you're in a place big or small, unless the buck absolutely stops with you, there's always, the potential to go, okay, that's not my problem. I don't need to deal with that bit. When you're running your own agency, you have to deal with every single bit, the great news and also the really, really tough news. And we had some really tough times. We lost, a couple of years in, lost our sort of big client pretty much overnight, and an enormous amount of our kind of revenue just disappeared. And it's like, okay, we need to deal with this, right? We need to put a plan in place. We need to learn from it. We need to move on. But, I couldn't, even as a creative person, go, oh, it's about clients and finance and someone else will deal with that, because that's not the case. So I think that was both the most exciting and the most difficult bit of running a business.
Cool. Thank you so much. We also got a question from Jonathan. He's asking, what is a secret ambition that you haven't told anyone?
Oh, gee, that's a good question. You know what? At some point before whatever retirement is now, some point long in the future, I would love to spend proper quality time back in Asia. I had, right at the very beginning of my career, I spent about 9 months in Tokyo, and that was in the mid 90s, and absolutely loved it. But I really love I love Asian cultures, and they're all very different, but there is a certain beauty about the way that people treat each other and kind of an understanding of working together. I love people, right? And I love collaborating, and there's a real joy there that I would love to go back and experience at some point. Not for a while though.
Okay. I think we have time for one last question.
Yeah.
And we have one from one of our viewers who's asking, how can we as creatives make sure stories we create are more diverse?
Yeah, look, that's a really, really important question. I think it is up to every single person, whether you're the most junior person or the most senior person, to make sure that diversity happens, the first thing I would say is don't make a piece of work about a particular group of people without including those people in the work. So, make sure, and, that comes from a real digital point of view. You would never make a digital piece of work or a platform without including the people who are going to be using that platform. And the same goes for advertising, in my opinion. You don't make the piece of work without someone or people being part of that work. And so then obviously the more diverse your business is, the easier it is to have points of view and for people to kind of catch things that might seem small, that aren't the right things to say, or to know when to kind of push things and really be able to reflect the audience in a great way. So I would say, if you're a leader, diversity is not only a good thing to do, it's incredibly important, and actually where creativity comes from, right? Smashing different ideas together, it just makes sense that the more diverse your ideas are, the better they're going to be and the more different they're going to be. So that, and then I think, in terms of actually the production, the casting, making sure that, when you're running triple bids, that you have diverse talent there, and we're not just kind of putting 3 of the same kind of people in front of our clients. All of those things help, but you need to be focused on making them happen, because it's very, very easy to slip into doing things in the wrong way. And I would say, the myth of meritocracy, right, is that, well, we've got, 3 directors who look like X because, actually there aren't enough, there aren't enough directors who are like this, or there aren't enough directors who are like that, or we couldn't find someone. But actually that's really lazy and just perpetuates, things like the patriarchy. So I would just say, just be aware. If you have an awareness, and if you listen, and if you have the right people in the room, you're going to get to great work.
All right, thank you so much, Laura. I'm afraid we're running out of time, but this has been such a pleasure.
Thanks, Max. Thanks.
You.
It's such a pleasure to be here as well. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Now up next, we have something rather special in store for you. You've seen them together, but individually, they're just as much a creative powerhouse. Rich Silverstein and Jeff Goodby will be joining us to share the inspirations, the beginnings, and the ups and downs of their careers. So out first, we have Rich Silverstein, who advises his fellow creatives to open up their eyes and ears to the planet, to the news, your teachers, artists, filmmakers, musicians, designers, and architects. Be humbled by their talent, soak it up, and then add your own flavor to it. And Rich, he will be joining us for a live Q&A afterwards, so do not forget to submit your questions by using the widget on the side of your screen. And don't forget that we want to hear from you, so we will be running polls during this next session as well. But now, let's get started with our third session of the day. This is Rich Silverstein's What I've Learned.
Well, hello, I'm Rich Silverstein. I think you know that. And along with Jeff Goodby, we're going to take you on a 20-minute ride about what influenced each of us actually before we ever became a team at Hal Riney. So I think it's going to be fun. It was really fun for us to even think about it. But setting the stage, okay, this is how we both grew up. There were no cell phones. There was no internet. There was no search. Apple was a music label. Silicon Valley grew fruit. Artisans actually handset type. Retouching was done by brush and knife, no Photoshop. And you cut film by hand. There was no 24-hour news, and there were 3 TV stations, not counting PBS, which no one actually watched. It was too boring. So let's start at 2937 Meadowcrest Drive, Yorktown Heights, New York, Northern Westchester, Middle America. In that house behind me, all the insecurities that any kid had, that's me. And then came Time magazine. Oh my God, it was a window onto the world. There was one section, the art section, that just spoke to me. I don't even know why, but visually, I always poured over it. Well, let's face it, high school was pretty hard for me. I wasn't a very good student. I know I've talked about this before. I didn't know I was dyslexic. The one thing that got me through it was lacrosse. It's an American Indian game. It's brutal, can be beautiful. My teacher of social studies was also my coach, Jim Turnbull. I've always looked to mentors, and that's where it started. You know, behind me is a a newspaper says Silverstein scored a goal. You know what? I just saw it. It's the highlight of my life, okay? I just really love lacrosse. So I'm in high school, and the PA system says everyone's going to go home early. And go, what? This has never happened. JFK had been shot.
From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time.
That was the first introduction to news at a level that has consumed me since. Then there was the Vietnam War, and it was a dinner time war. I know it sounds weird, but the family would be eating, and the TV would be on, and you would be seeing these scenes that were horrific. And you're going, this thing is not right.
Heroism, danger, fear.
You cannot be my age and not have the Vietnam War be part of your psyche. And that was my first introduction to really serious serial news. And then there was Watergate. And then it became a serial story. Every night, what's happening? Patty Hearst gets kidnapped. Another serial story. I think this collision of news and storytelling and the aesthetic of print, it's all collapsing. It's all part of who I am. It's just drama. You grew up in white suburbia. I had only one black student in all the high school. And then I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, and I'm just floored. It was a window into a life I didn't know about. Well, then I had to escape my suburban life, and I went to Parsons School of Design in New York, and then everything just exploded. I think that it's pretty hard not to start developing your aesthetic when you're in New York. You just walk. You go to the Guggenheim, and you see this masterpiece of Frank Lloyd Wright. You ride a subway and you look at people. Dirt, crime, beauty, it's all mushed together. New York was a movie every day. So now let's talk a little bit about filmmaking. Here's Stanley Kubrick, who was a photographer for Look magazine, becomes a director. What an aesthetic, what a way to bring characters out. Dr. Strangelove, all-time best characters. And again, it's that serial storytelling of, are we going to go to war in Cuba? Strangelove, my God, right. I love it. In art school, I was introduced to Bauhaus, and there wasn't any aesthetic in the Bauhaus that was wrong. It was so exciting. It didn't matter if it was graphic design, photography, fashion, jewelry, architecture. Even today, if I see Bauhaus design, I actually get goosebumps. I actually didn't think art school was all that important. Really, what I did is I found this, this mentor idea, finding someone who I could look up to. And Dick Hess, who was a Renaissance man, he was a designer, an illustrator, who said, to be in this business of design, you should be willing to do anything. Shovel gravel at the designer's house. So I took him up on that, and I got an internship at Dick Hess. That was my introduction. And I would say to anyone who's in this business, who is young, find mentors or to work at any job to start. To this day, he was a great influence on mine. It's funny, I didn't really graduate from Parsons. I refused to go to the graduation. It was during the Vietnam War, and my rebellion was I wasn't going to give the man something. And so I don't think I have a diploma. But I do remember being introduced to Helvetica. And that is another thing that changed my life. I mean, the Swiss design, I didn't know anything about it. Still today, type is so important to me. And it was that introduction of a beautiful, like it was a New York City subway. So what was going on in the 60s is editorial art and writing was so powerful. Like Esquire magazine, you couldn't wait for it to come. And the covers designed by George Lois. Now, I didn't know who George Lois was, but what a genius of communicating. And so they used an advertising man to come up with the cover designs. I thought it was, looking back, brilliant. Rock and roll was exploding. But really what I was drawn to is going to the record stores and looking at the album covers. That's where you found art. That's where you found new design. You didn't even have to play the music yet, and you were excited. There was one company called Hypnosis out of London. Just brilliant work. The Pink Floyd is a classic example. I'm still in art school, and this guy comes running in. He says, look at this, and it was just white. And then you saw Beatles, and you go, oh my God, how brilliant that you can take something so simple and make it so powerful. The father of graphic design for me is Milton Glaser. There was no one better. Here's a guy, goes to art school and learns how to paint, like really paint, and then give that up and find a way to deconstruct that into beautiful graphic design. I mean, that Dylan poster, still good today, amazing. It's not just design, it's wit. It had a language, it had an idea behind it. It's not just fluff, it's not just pretty. It's the intelligence of graphic design that has moved me forever. I only hope that Jeff and myself have some little bit of that in us. It's not just about the still image. There's this guy named Saul Bass, great designer, but he was so ahead of his time. He would take images and start moving them. And they became great title sequences to movies. So you look at his work right now, it's still great. And it's because the idea is got wit, put to music, energy, sound, drama, and it's all out of 2 dimensions, animated. One thing I haven't talked about is photography. Between Deanne Arbus and Irving Penn, I mean, I was like, yes. Penn didn't mind being in the commercial world and the art world together. And that I've always admired. It's not only aesthetic, but it's the craft of his printing. It's all in the details. If you saw Penn print, you want to touch it. It's alive. And it's details like that have stayed with me forever. I was a car nut. I mean, I didn't know how to fix cars, but I studied Car and Driver. I couldn't wait for it to come in the mail. And along comes Bullitt, and you go, oh my God, the energy of this movie and the brilliance of McQueen. Interesting, this place called San Francisco, 3,000 miles away. I'm going there. It really was Haight-Ashbury. It really was Berkeley. It really was residue of Kerouac. You know, it was just an intelligent city where art and music and editorial and espresso. I had never had an espresso before until I came to San Francisco. So when I arrive in San Francisco, I am so naive. I have this book from Parsons School of Design. I don't know who's going to hire me. I meet every designer in San Francisco. I just did it. And one really stood out is Margette Larson, and she worked with Howard Gossage. And I know this is not going to sound like much right now, but she put Beethoven and Mozart on sweatshirts. Like, no one had ever done that. She changed the way design and popular culture and fashion collided. Still today, Jeff and I started our company really on the aesthetic of Howard Gossage and Margette Larson. We took a field trip down to LA and I met Charles and Ray Eames. Now you talk about modernists. What's interesting, they were graphic designers and chair makers, and then they made these little films that are brilliant. They just saw the aesthetic of everything being modern forever. I mean, you can be in an Eames chair, which I think I am in right now. They're still modern today. I talked Jan Wenner into hiring me at Rolling Stone, and I had no rock and roll background. I don't know, I just thought that'd be an interesting place to work. It's funny because he said, well, what magazines do you like? And I said, Scientific America. What did I know about that? I just said it. Got the job. I was introduced to gonzo journalism and, Hunter Thompson and the strangeness of having to put a magazine out quickly, which really helped me. Today, I like to work fast, like I'm an editorial art director. After I got a job at Rolling Stone, somehow I had credibility and I became the art director of San Francisco Magazine. And I mean, I was the entire department. I would read the stories and then I would have to quickly conceive an idea and then hire an artist to do it. The aesthetic of storytelling in print, I think that's all really good, valuable stuff. I did not chase advertising, but being in editorial after a while, seeing these ads that I had to place in the magazine, I thought, that's kind of interesting. But then there's this thing happening in New York, which was really Madison Avenue. And we're talking the fast talking man FedEx. We're talking Ali Gargana. We're talking great, simple, powerful advertising. It isn't about special effects. It's about storytelling right here. I still think it's the best. So I get a job at Hal Riney. Hal Riney was known as, pretty much of a genius of advertising and a son of a bitch. And he said, you're going to be working with this guy, Jeff Goodby. I didn't know who Jeff was. And you're going to work on Billy Ball.
What's wrong? Remember Leave It to Beaver? Oh, sure. What was Wally's best friend's name?
They may be discussing how to pitch to this big Boston pinch hitter.
You mean Eddie Haskell?
Well, I guess they've got...
Jeff loved baseball, and I liked the aesthetic of baseball. I didn't know much about baseball. It worked. We found out that both of us don't have to know very much about the product. At least one does. But without Hal Riney, there would be no Goodby, Silverstein and Partners. We learned a lot from Hal in only 2 years. I soaked up everything Hal did. I mean, the idea of using everyday people who weren't actors, but a great script and a little bit of clunkiness to it because you could feel the realness of the people. I took that away. I think Jeff took it away, and I think we tried to make it our own in this company. Well, it's funny. I haven't talked about advertising because I didn't like it. When you're a graphic designer, the evil is advertising. And somehow I found myself in advertising. But we've always tried to bring the aesthetic of graphic design and editorial together. It's funny, the yin-yang of Jeff Goodby and Rich Silverstein is really that, the art and editorial put together. So I would say to everyone, have mentors, have people that you look up to, study things, don't try to do everything yourself, and there's always something to learn, because I'm still learning.
Fantastic session, and welcome Rich, who's joining me here virtually in the studio.
Hi. Wow. A new world we live in.
Yeah, how's it going?
Well, we're managing, We've got 1 year through the pandemic, and everyone is comfortable working electronically now. I can't wait to get back. But, because we know our people so well that looking through glass, it feels like we still have friends to work with. I don't want it to go on another year.
All right, because you got a lot of questions, so I think it's time for us to just dive straight into it. First question. You talked about mentors and how they influence your career, but what would be your advice for someone, for instance, a young creative looking for a mentor today?
It's the same thing. You soak up anything you're interested in. I would suggest, when I say mentors, I was lucky enough to actually work with some of these people, but you don't have to work with them. You just have to study them, observe them. I made a list. It's funny because I thought you'd ask a question like this. And if you think about something like Phoebe from Fleabag, I don't know her, but I think she's amazing. I think when I watch her aesthetic, how she writes, how she acts, how she breaks the fourth wall, I'm amazed. And so that to me is a mentor, just to study people.
Great. That's actually a very good approach, I guess. And then my second question is, how has advertising changed over the years since you started your career up until now?
Yeah. How has it's changed? In some ways, it hasn't changed because you still find the nugget of the truth of something and then you exploit it. That's never changed. The media has changed, to do a TikTok, to do a Facebook, to do a something online, that has totally changed. The idea that a 60-second spot is still amazing in a big format, like in America, the Super Bowl, but you have to find different avenues now to take that aesthetic of the truth and find new mediums to work in. I don't know if I've answered that.
No, absolutely. Because we also asked our audience what their creative process is like, and we got some quite interesting results in. And here, if we take a look at them together, here are some of the results. I need a good night's sleep in order to think things through, 37%. I need to talk it out and collaborate with my team, 33%. Yes. Ideas come to me quick and fast. I guess that's a bit of your approach that you were talking about. Yes. And I need to create at least 100 ideas before I get one. Which one of these would you say resonates best with you?
I get a good night's sleep, man.
Yeah.
I just sleep early. But what I didn't talk about in this film is I've learned, because exercise has been so important to me. So I ride my bike every day. Ideas just come. It's just an idea generating machine. The more you relax, the more the ideas come through. And so between exercise and sleep and having a good partner, that's pretty good.
And when you were working as an editorial art director, you were also talking about the pace of things. Do you think that helps creativity, or do you think it works in the or is counterproductive?
I don't know how to work slow. So I believe that ideas come fast. The execution of that later on might take some more time. But if it feels right, it is right. You really have to go with the gut. If it, it's kind of like if you watch a rough cut, it's so painful because you watch a rough cut of something and you go, don't convince yourself it's good. If it doesn't feel right, it's not right. And your gut is really important.
But do you think you can train your gut or your gut feeling?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think everything takes time. I think no one comes out of school and knows it right away. It was so painful for me. You doubt yourself. You question if you have talent. Every day is up and down. The business is, even for me today, one moment I'm really like, this is a fantastic business, and the other is clients don't understand what you're trying to say, and you go, oh my God, it's up and down. It's never going to be even. Advertising is not even. To me, it's like a sport. Each day you're on the field and you're playing, and you might win, you might lose. It's never easy, but it's still fun. So.
Yeah, because we got a question from Jason. What learnings can we take away from old media while trying to stay relevant today?
Oh, storytelling. Come on, it's forever. After cave people and the fire, and you sit around and you tell a story. I don't know when they started doing that. We're telling stories today. It's in our DNA. Nothing changes there.
Awesome. And then you were also talking about like blending elements of graphic design and editorial. And how do you do that without compromising?
I believe that graphic design is the unsung hero of advertising. You don't really even talk about it. You just do it, and it's in there. It's in the idea, and it's very hard to talk design to clients if they don't understand it. You just do it, and I think the idea of graphic design and editorial, which is what Jeff and I started, is we just put it into everything. We put it into everything we do today, and we've taught people that. In fact, we have a really good design department, and we hire really good writers. So nothing has changed. Design, I'd like to get paid to do the graphic design, but I'll still give it out free because it has to look beautiful. Don't let any clients hear them.
Okay, Rich, we also asked our audience what inspired them when they were starting out in their careers, and we got some quite interesting results here.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, they got milk.
Come on.
They believe that to be a better way. We might commute on the subway, wondering about other people's lives, and
Yes.
A few of these. Are there any of these that resonate with you?
Well, it's funny. Got milk just came from the truth. Again, we had people in the company doubt that why would you want to advertise milk? Well, milk is like air and water. When you don't have it, you really miss it. And so there's the truth in that. And so, we did it. We weren't naive, but didn't think it was going to be that big. In fact, in advertising, you put one foot forward. You don't think, oh, we're building this giant campaign. You just do the thing that you feel is right. And if it grows, it grows. But we had no idea it was going to be that big. But the other thing, I mentioned the subway. I think opening your eyes to what's going on in the world, and I've made numerous points to stop looking down and look up. I just think be part of society. Don't try to be inside society like that. That would help, I think, with ideas.
Yeah, because we got a question from one of our viewers asking, do you think it matters where you come from? Because I come from a small country, and it sometimes feels hard for us to break through the clutter of creative in advertising.
Wow, that's an interesting question. No one's ever said that to me. We hire from every country in the world, and we like the idea of a world society in advertising. I don't think that person should be worried about the small country, except probably opportunities to do work that many people can see. But, storytelling is in every country in the world. So I wouldn't worry about that. But if you don't feel good about it, leave. Like, okay, I didn't talk about this. Every year and a half, I left the company I was in and moved on. It's not in my film, but I wasn't impatient. If it didn't feel right, I moved on. And I thought, if I could learn from that person and that person, it was, and I know that Hal Riney was this really tough guy about advertising. I went, well, I want to be challenged. And so I went there. And I think just keep challenging yourself. Do not be complacent. Do not say, it's good enough. I'll stay here for a while. Move on.
So what do you do today then to challenge yourself and to constantly, grow and evolve?
Yeah. You mean me or the person you're talking to, the audience?
No, I mean you.
Oh my God. It's funny. I was here. Here's a bunch of things because so Christian Markley is an artist who did The Clock. And if anyone can see The Clock, which is literally 24 hours live, you watch The Clock, and he's spliced with movies that make it a clock, which is amazing. And if anyone has not seen Hamilton, you can see it from Spike Lee filming it on Broadway, which is amazing. And you've got to see it because it's got everything. It's got storytelling, it's got life, it's got humanity, it's artful. For me, Maggie Haberman, who's a reporter from the New York Times, who followed the crap inside the White House with Trump, was amazing. The NASA Mars rover, I'm like, oh my God, this little thing is traveling around Mars. Valentino Rossi, which is a MotoGP rider, and his spirit is amazing. And then, has anyone seen The Sound of Metal? You've got to see it. You've got to see this actor is like tremendous. And then, because we're all stuck at home, watch great shows like The Wire. The Wire has the best characters besides The Sopranos of any continuing story. And so what I do is I challenge myself by just still soaking stuff up. Just soak it up. Do not just look at advertising. Do not. There you go. That was a spaz.
Yeah, but thank you so much. Because we had another viewer asking about Bauhaus. Because what makes Bauhaus timeless for you? And what makes it so inspiring for you?
Oh my God. Just before the Nazis. I mean, can you imagine the amount of talent that was in that building? Modernism is, I mentioned Eames, but the Bauhaus was everything. The Bauhaus just looked at everything as new, okay? Not like something anyone has ever thought about. And they had a spirit. And I think if we could have a little bit of that today, we have it in pockets every once in a while. At one point, what's going on in Berlin was the hippest, or London, or Mexico City. Right now, LA with artists is pretty amazing. There's these pockets, but Bauhaus just still today is so inventive. And it was, like I said, it could be fashion, it could be photography, it could be just a play that they wrote. I can't put words to it, but I can feel it.
Okay, thank you so much, Rich. We're going to have to cut it there because we're running out of time. but much appreciated, and I hope to see you sometime.
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed it. So good luck, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, now you can probably guess who our next guest is. Jeff Goodby, he's not just an advertising heavyweight, but he's also an artist and a painter. He believes that creatives should actively seek out things that are not just advertising and pursue their careers with the perseverance of a tank, but with a good sense of humor, of course. We will be running some polls during the next session, and Jeff will also be joining us for a live Q&A afterwards, so do not forget to get involved. But now, let's get started with our final session of the day. This is Jeff Goodby's What I've Learned.
So the influences of a lifetime, wow, you become a different person over time, and there's so many things that affect you, and many times they're things that you don't even realize are going on. But in the end, they sort of become the raw materials of your creativity, so they're important, So I was born in Providence, Rhode Island. It was mostly working class people, fairly blue collar. This meant that I met lots of different kinds of kids from lots of different sort of families. And I got beaten up well into middle school. Taught me certain humility about life that I think was good for me. My mom and dad were certainly big influences. My dad was an insurance guy, and he had a wonderful sense of humor and has a big intelligence that has affected me my whole life. My mother went to art school. She taught me to draw. She taught me how to print things. She took me to museums. I'm sure some of that rubbed off a little bit. I'm a public school kid, and actually I'm kind of proud of that. I remember a couple of moments in grade school that I think were particularly affecting for me. One was we had to make a costume. For some reason, and this dates me a little bit, I chose to be a cigarette machine. I sort of had cigarette packs all over this cardboard box, and they're like buttons that you could, put money in and so on. And I won the contest. Doing little performance things like that were good for you. I was obsessed with baseball. It's slow and perfect and contemplative, and I'm sure that that's affected me over the years. I went to high school in East Greenwich, Rhode Island. I was a bad basketball player and a good football player. I was in a band called The Runaways. We actually did a really bad job of dyeing our hair with hydrogen peroxide of some kind, just burned our hair basically. And we went to school that way, and people thought we were crazy. And I suddenly realized that being a little bit different, not too different, was a good thing, I had friends that liked to go out at night and perform vandalism, small acts of vandalism, like breaking pumpkins and waxing windows and stuff. And we actually one night tied Mr. Mistretta's bumper to a downspout on his garage. When he drove away the next day, it pulled the downspout off of the garage and then went clanking down the street. But I think we were so excited by it, and we looked forward to the effect of it. I think you should have that feeling in advertising. You should look forward to having your thing run and mess people up, And there should be a little bit of that vandalism in everything that you do. Somehow I got into Harvard after all that. That was sort of a mediocre English student. I did one day go to Widener Library and start looking at design magazines. And I noticed these advertising things that were being done mostly at an agency in New York called Doyle Dane Bernbach by people like Phyllis Robinson, who was the most terrific writer of the time, and Helmut Krohn. I looked at their stuff, like the Volkswagen, Think Small campaign, and I went, wow, this is the way that people think when you talk to yourself inside your head. It wasn't dishonest. It wasn't selling you anything. It was real. And I thought maybe it's an interesting business to be in. I didn't really think I'd ever go into it. I also tried out for the Harvard Lampoon, which at the time, Henry Beard and Doug Kenny had just left the Lampoon to start the National Lampoon, which I think had a lot of effect on all of our senses of humor in the end. And the people that were with me on the Lampoon, like Sandy Frazier and Jim Downey, who went on to be the head writer at Saturday Night Live, took that sense of humor that was sort of invented at the Harvard Lampoon and took it forward to the National Lampoon and then to Saturday Night Live in many ways. And that certainly affected me and the kind of sense of humor that I have.
Fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life, sir.
After school, I started working at the Peabody Times, small suburban newspaper. I had to write a lot of stuff, and I had to write it fast. I had to file 3 stories a day. I'd write them in the middle of a room of people with clacking typewriters everywhere and talking, and somebody would be doing a movie review here, and somebody would be talking about the date sex that they had last night, and you still had to write about the thing that you were writing on, and you had to get it out. I think that's actually been very valuable to me over time. I can write on deadline, and a lot of times my best ideas come to me really quickly. And if they don't come quickly, sometimes they don't come at all. Around that time, I started drawing for the Peabody Times. They were also noticed by another newspaper, the Boston Herald American, and I started drawing for them, and particularly for their Sunday magazine. I didn't really think there'd be any future in drawing much. I was really thinking of myself as a journalist. The new journalism was all the rage. Woodward and Bernstein had just made Nixon retire. I loved that kind of writing. I loved Tom Wolfe and Norman Mailer and Truman Capote, Hunter S. Thompson. They all made journalism personal. They didn't worry about the truth or something. They were doing something that was their point of view, what they saw, what they felt. So I began to follow Hunter Thompson in Rolling Stone, and the guy that always illustrated him was Ralph Steadman, this British guy, just a crazy illustrator. And I started to go, I love this kind of illustration. I wonder if I could do this as well as the writing thing. So I started thinking about that, and I started studying Ronald Searle at the New Yorker. And a really big thing that affected me at the time was a thing that they called the op-ed page, which was opposite the editorial page. And there were drawings on that page that I thought were just amazing. People like Seymour Quast and Milton Glaser, Brad Holland, that drew on those pages. And I started to emulate what they did. I loved their illustration, and I started trying to emulate it. And I got some jobs. I started drawing for Harvard Magazine, which is a magazine basically for Harvard graduates, but Harvard graduates are a pretty good audience to draw for, very influential. And there was a guy there, editor named Kit Reed, who would call me up, and he had a great sort of Long Island accent that sounded like he had a pencil in his mouth all the time, and it would be like, Jeffrey, we have an article here about bone cancer, and it's not illustratable, I don't think. Do you think you could draw something for it? And I'd try to draw something for bone cancer, and he liked what I did. He started letting me draw covers. So that actually gave me a lot of showpieces for my stuff, and I began to draw for Time Magazine. I drew things for Mother Jones, and these didn't pay a lot of money. They were a few $100s a piece. But I was doing that, and I loved doing it. And around that time, my wife, who grew up in California, thought that she would really like to live in California again. So we picked everything up, and we moved to the only place in California that I think I could stand living. I told her was San Francisco. It was a crazy time to be there. The leftovers of the Haight-Ashbury time, the Jim Jones thing in South America, the assassination of the mayor, all of that happened within just a year or two when we arrived in San Francisco. So when I couldn't get a newspaper job, I tried. So I started thinking maybe I could work at an advertising agency. So I went around to all the agencies at the time. There were lots of agencies from New York that had offices in San Francisco. And so finally I met up with a guy named Charles Martel at McCann Erickson, and he said, you're not going to get a job unless you write some advertising. So I went home and I wrote a lot of advertising, because I took it around, and I got a job almost immediately at J. Walter Thompson with a guy named Stu Hyatt. And Hyatt was a guy who had worked at Doyle, Dean, Bernbach and done a lot of the famous ads that I was seeing at Widener Library and at Harvard. The place didn't have great work coming out of it, but they had great people there, and there was a great culture that made you like advertising and like the intelligence of the people around you, which was really important to me at the time. And I got to do a lot of really interesting work there. He trusted me to do that, and that was incredibly influential for me. I was allowed to make mistakes. I also remember him saying to me, he let me do a new business pitch, and I remember talking to this group of, big business guys at Chevron or something, and Stu said to me, you're doing things you don't even know you're doing. And I said, wow, that's cool. He said, yeah, that's good. That's a good thing. I began to write on the Chevron account there, and I did some animation that involved these dinosaurs that were in the gas tank of cars, because gasoline comes from dinosaurs. And a guy named Hal Riney saw that advertising on TV. Now, Riney was probably the biggest influence on my advertising life, and he was the best advertising person in the country at the time, with a company of only 26 people. So that was amazing. And people pretty much acknowledged that coast to coast. So we got there at a time when we could still have direct contact with Hal. His standards were just so high. Every single thing had to be perfect. The casting had to be perfect. The timing, there was not a place where you made mistakes. I remember being in his office one day when he got a call from one of his friends who was a big director, Dick Snyder, and I could tell that Snyder had said to him, what's going on? And Hal said, I'm just trying to make some of the best fucking advertising in the world. And he looked right into my eyes as he said that, and I realized that he was telling me to do that. And it was there that, I met Rich and started working with him, which of course changed a lot of things. There were things that started a little bit earlier, even the music, especially punk music, the Ramones and the Sex Pistols really affected me because I liked the spontaneity of it, the freedom of it. In terms of filmmaking, I really loved the French New Wave films like, Godard and Truffaut, but even more, I think, the sort of classic American things like Hitchcock and John Huston. And I think that actually affected our work in many ways. I think it's really important to do things that are not advertising. To be good at this stuff, you have to be a bad musician. Don't touch your life. You don't know where it's been. Which I am. I'm a bad musician. I can play some stuff on the piano and the guitar and violin and so on. I can draw and I can paint. But the things that I paint are like portraits of my family. I've painted some animals for my grandson. I've taken a house that we have, vacation house, and put like big words on it just for fun. There was no reason, but I think that kind of spirit kind of, affects the way that you work in advertising. I have season tickets to the Warriors and the San Francisco Opera. Those are helpful things. Those influences are important to keep going in your life. I have a little tequila company. It makes me think about something other than what my job is. Finally, there's the having a family. My wife, Jan, and my kids, Nina, Grace, and Nat. They're an amazing influence for me and a sort of a grounding and a sense of humor and a sense of not being too important. It's all like a big gumbo of your life, basically. You got to have a sense of humor. You got to be Groucho. You got to be a sponge. You got to take everything in. And then you got to have the perseverance of a tank, man. You got to hang in there. You got to go back and do it again. And when it doesn't work, you got to learn from it. That's what I look at, along with the so many people in my life. You get like a great freedom to use all of those elements. And one of the great things for me has been meeting Rich. He's a person that's visual first, words second. And I'm kind of words first, visual second. He blurts stuff out that, you've just never heard before. I've likened him to night vision goggles for me because he sees things that I don't see. It's a wonderful kind of influence in life. And that's kind of, it's one of the most important things that can happen. I drew a picture of him actually while we were talking here. I think that this is a nice ending to this thing.
Great session and a warm welcome to Jeff, who's joining me here in the studio.
Hey Max, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good.
And where are you joining us from?
I'm in that house that was mentioned in the film that had the words on it. Today it doesn't have the words on it anymore, and the heat is not working. It's very cold here.
It looks sunny though.
It's nice. Yeah, it's getting sunnier. It'll improve.
Awesome. All right. So, Jeff, during your talk, we asked the audience. We asked them what's most important to them, and let's look at their results because we'll see a bit of a divide here. What's most important to them when it comes to strategy, incredible copy, art direction, etc. Are there any of these things that resonate better with you, or do you think anything is more important than the other?
I'm surprised that Spot On Strategies is at the top. That's interesting. I would hope that, just putting a dent in people's heads would be at the top. But strategies do that. I admit it, but the things that attract you. When I said that Rich was visuals first, I remember sitting at a bar with him and having him actually see the design of the labels on the bottles before he even took in the meaning of the words. Like he wouldn't even know it was a tequila bottle or a scotch bottle. And so I do believe that wherever that was, that stunning visuals ranked there, it's very important. I mean, it's the thing that kind of draws you in first and makes you read the words and makes you pay attention to meaning. And of course, I'm not putting down strategies. Strategies have been so important to my life. And I've been lucky to work with so many people that are terrific at it. John Steele, Bonnie Wan, Christine Chen, those people are just amazing at that stuff. I need help. That's why I love strategies.
Cool. But where would you have put your vote if you were voting from afar?
I would probably do the stunning visual thing,
Yeah.
I believe that there's a simplicity to your first take on advertising. It has to be there. It has to pull you in, make you want to engage with it, And I think that's very important. I mean, it's been proven in the history of advertising. The stuff that works is beautiful and attractive.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so we got a question from Genki, and he's asking, what's the best self-branding you've ever done? And do you have any advice to basically brand yourself when you're making a mark in the advertising industry?
Well, we're very lucky to start the agency at a time when there weren't a lot of really good agencies outside of New York and maybe Chicago. And so, strangely, the press was like looking for agencies that might be started in cities like Minneapolis and Portland and San Francisco. And there was kind of something in the air. It's not a coincidence that Wieden & Kennedy was started the same year we did. Fallon McElligott was started the year before us. And I think the world kind of wanted that to happen. And that was very helpful to us. So that's not self-promotion, but we just walked in at the right time. And we were very lucky in that regard. Self-promotion now is so different from what it was then. You have to work at it now a lot harder than you did then. You have to put the time in and create the world. Imagine yourself through the eyes of other people. That's what this business is all about. So when you are branding yourself, look at yourself through other people's eyes and don't try to tell them what you hope they'll see. You have to see what they're seeing, and it's been true all along. We've never been people to go out and do ads for ourselves.
And is this something you look for when you're hiring people?
Oh, I look for people that are different from the typical advertising people. I love people that go to art schools and advertising schools too, but I love to find people from unusual places, stand-up comics and people that have published their own comic books and people that have just done things that are different from what other people have done in the world. And I think that they make the best creatives in many ways. I've had lawyers that are terrific creatives, strange places. You never know.
Yeah, I also think that the more diverse, the better creative output you normally get.
For sure. Diversity is really important, of course, in so many ways, in not just culturally, racially, ethnically, but in terms of, and of course in terms of men and women as well. And I think we've really tried hard to balance that out in our place, and it's made a big difference.
So I got another question from Anastasia. What's your most favorite way / formula of creating an idea?
Boy, I don't know if there's a formula. They come to you at odd times. I think the most important thing about ideas is to be open to having them hit you. I was reading a George Saunders thing, a writer whom I really like a lot recently, And he said, creativity is kind of like being in the park, and suddenly a strange frisbee comes at you. It's not yours. It's flying through the air, and you just reach out and catch it. Now, there are a lot of people that won't catch it. You have to be ready to catch the frisbee. And I think that that's what creativity is all about. It's about making connections between things in the world that other people are not going to make connections between. And you have to be alert to see those connections.
Yeah, because in your video, you also were talking about that you like to create ideas fast, or maybe if they don't come fast, they might not come at all. So do you have like a methodology or a process for yourself to basically generate these fast ideas?
I just work all the time. Like I never stop working. You know, I mean, Rich talked about riding a bike. I think I'm riding a bike all the time. I try my best to be alert to life and to use every moment of my life as material, weirdly enough. I hope my family's not watching. Yeah. But that's what happens. You know, you're always working. You have to be that way.
And how do you get the energy to work so much?
I don't know. I'm very lucky. I don't have to sleep, you know. I sleep more now than I did when I was younger, but I didn't sleep at all when I was younger, you know, like 4 hours a night. I'm probably going to die any second here. But I'm very lucky to have just a lot of energy at a certain level. Like Rich is like way up here and then bam, he's gone. And I'm like here all day long. That's, you know, 6 hours of sleep and I can keep it there. I'm lucky.
Yeah, and we actually got another question from one of our viewers. What's your biggest learning from Rich skills?
From Rich?
Rich's skills or his his toolbox. Like, what's your biggest learning from his?
Simplicity. He has something on his door that says brutal simplicity at the office, and I changed it to simple brutality one day, which he didn't like. But his mantra is the thing should be simple, it should be clear, it should attack you. And I love that. You know, I mean, I tend to way overcomplicate stuff. He reminds me of that all the time. And I think simplicity is so important in communications.
And you were also talking about having the perseverance of a tank, but is that something you could train yourself to have?
That's a really interesting question. Yeah, you can. You know, and I say that to the younger people in the audience, that if there are two things that I would say to you, one is to never give up. I mean, and of course I'm talking about getting a job and, you know, making it in life. But also I'm just talking about what happens when you do get a job, when you do get an opportunity. You have to really go for it. You have to put in the time and be different from other people. The second thing I would say is, and it's something that I was very lucky to be presented with, look for an opportunity to go off on your own and start your own company. And if you don't look for that opportunity, it won't come to you, you know? I mean, I was lucky enough to hit upon a freelance account that became Electronic Arts, and I met Rich and Andy Berlin and started this company. Look for that moment. Look for something around you that might enable you to do that, because it's really the best thing not to be your own boss, and not to be underneath somebody else who's telling you what to do. And, you know, the best of all possible worlds is to make these decisions for yourself. It's really scary at first, but you'll get better at it, and you'll learn a lot about yourself. And that's what life is.
Yeah, that's a very, very good answer, and I totally agree with you. So what would you say are the 3 most important ingredients when writing a good story?
Well, the most important ingredient by far is something I touched on, and that is to look at it through the eyes of another person. Like when you first start writing, you write for yourself, and you think that everybody's going to be really interested in what you're writing. And then, you know, in time, you learn to see it through the eyes of other people. Is it simple? Is there a great first sentence that's so simple that you have to read this thing? Where does it go? Where does it start to die? You know, and I think you have to look at it that way. Like who's going to see this thing and why are they going to be moved by it? I think that you have to be human. You have to bring a humanity to it, a sort of universal kind of appeal, so that when you're doing this stuff, humans are going to read it. They're not machines. They bring their whole lives to a reading experience, and you have to acknowledge that they are deep and interesting people. And that's probably the last thing that, I think advertising talks down to people a lot and presumes they're not paying attention, presumes they're not smart, presumes they don't have a sense of humor. I think one of the things we've done in the world is to presume that people are smart, presume they have the same senses of humor that we have, presume they're paying attention, and give them things that are deep and meaningful and beautiful, and try to approach them at a higher level.
Yeah, thank you. And then we have another question here, because you have many different creative talents and skills. But do you think it's important for a creative today to be multidisciplinary, or do you think it's better to focus on one thing and be really, really good at that?
I'm afraid it's better to be good at a lot of things. So you should be ready to try to do that. In fact, there are more things you should be good at than I'm good at. You should learn some coding. You should learn a really higher level. I mean, I'm pretty good at things like Photoshop and InDesign and Premiere, but you should be better than I am. I think you can't have too many skills these days, because that's the way that you interact with the world. That's the way you make things that communicate with people, and I think you have to have those tools. So, I mean, I just look at my abilities to draw and write and so on as tools, and I'm not necessarily the best at any of that, but doing a lot of them has really served me well.
So, have you learned anything new then during the past year when we've been in this flux?
I've learned about the resiliency of people. There's a basic humanity of people that comes through, even in media like this. And I was watching Rich in this session earlier, and it's just amazing how people can come through a screen and be there with you. Obviously, it's nothing like being present with them, but it's different, and it's not necessarily worse. I think we've learned a lot about ourselves communicating this way, and I'm not afraid of it anymore. We all, I think, for the first month, were afraid of this, and I don't think I'm afraid of it anymore. I'm kind of sick of it, but I'm not afraid.
That's good. Okay, I think we have time for one last question from Elena. Is humor something that can be learned, or is it more a talent that you're born with?
Boy, that's interesting. I think it can be learned a little bit. I think you can study people that you like and sort of pick it up. And I think everybody has an innate sense of humor to them. And many times they just don't access it, and I talk to people that come from other countries, and they feel like they should learn the American kind of humor. And I'm always like, no, bring me the humor from your country, the thing that's innate in you, find it inside of you and bring it to us. That's what's going to be really unusual. And I think that stands for people too. I mean, look for funny things in the world that you connect with and try to reproduce them, remember them, use that same that same dynamic again. You can learn it.
Great stuff. Okay, one last question. Super simple. What's the best work you've ever done? Or which of all the work you've done are you most proud with?
That's not fair. That's not fair. I'm just so lucky to be around so much good work. I avoid that question. Listen, the best thing I've ever done is to be around people that do that work. And that's what keeps re-energizing me, And it's a cliche to say that you hope that the next thing you do is going to be better than anything you've done before. But I actually believe that, I actually get up every day thinking that can happen. And I think you have to. So I've been very lucky. I mean, I have walked in the midst of a pantheon of ridiculously talented people, and I've been very lucky to be inspired by that. So I didn't answer the question. I'm sorry.
No, absolutely. That's fine. That's fine. Thank you so much, because we're running out of time, so we're going to have to leave it there. But thank you so much.
That was fun. Thanks. Thanks, Max.
Bye-bye. Oh, what an incredible day it's been. I really hope you feel inspired, full of learnings and fresh perspective, tips and tricks ready to be applied in your daily work, because I certainly have. A massive thanks to our speakers for sharing your fantastic stories, and a huge thanks to our brilliant audience for submitting your questions. And of course, to our Q&A partner, WeTransfer. All of today's films and all of Lions Live content is available to watch on the Lions Live platform, so do not forget to check it all out. But I hope to see you at some time, because this is it for now. Have a good one. Bye-bye.